So, good evening all, and welcome to this our evening digital seminar session of what we popularly call it as a PGNR. And today's speaker is none else than the famous dermatologist Dr. Bela Shah from Ahmedabad, and Dr. U.S. Agarwal will introduce Dr. Bela Shah. Dr. U.S., will you please uh, we first of we invite her to chair the session, and then kindly Dr. Bela, we just offer you a virtual bouquet, and that
so thank you so much.
Please accept it, and
thank you so much.
Then Dr. US will introduce.
Sure, sir.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes, very much.
Good evening, everybody. Today we will be talking about palm cancer keratoderma, and our speaker is a very senior and very active dermatologist from India, Dr. Bela Shah. Everybody knows her. He does not need much introduction. But she has written many textbooks and chapters in different books, and it shows that she is very keenly interested in writing and reading. She has written a textbook on an atlas on illustrating HIV in dermatology. Ward rounds in dermatology is something new. I have never heard that ward rounds in dermatology. What kind of the education she has given in this comprehensive textbook on acne, textbook on psoriasis, OST in dermatology, chapter on adverse drug reaction in IDB textbook, and chapter on differential diagnosis or neurological disorders in relation to leprosy in Lal textbook of leprosy. She has contributed more than 20 chapters in various books, which includes the API textbooks of medicine, drug reaction, diuretic, pediatric medicine, and UGI PP textbooks. She is reviewer of many journals, which includes IDOS, IJDBL, IJD, and IJPD. She has organized first Dermazone West 2008, and in 2013, she has been Scientific Committee Chairperson of Dermacon 2013, Dermazone West. She has been invited as guest speaker in European Academy of Dermatology Conference, Vienna, Austria 2007. She is a master trainer in NV and also NV instructor. She has written more than 65 publications in national and 9 international publications. So with this rich background, I request Dr. Bela Shah to enlighten us today on palm of leopard.
Before that, we will just go for the lighting of the lamp. Hope this is audible.
Satru buddhi vinashaya dipu jyoti namostute.
शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणं आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः
Share screen.
शत्रुबुद्धिविनाशाय
Ana pachi share screen. Ana pachi share screen.
दीपज्योते नमोस्तुते दीपज्योते
आप पता नहीं।
नमोस्तुते शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणं आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणं आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः
Well, Dr. Bela, you can share your screen, start sharing your screen.
Yes, yes.
Hope you are comfortable with the.
Yes, yes, yes. Very much.
Sure, please. Hello, Dr. Niranjan Nagpur Sahib. Welcome. We are almost 76. Have you opened your presentation first?
Yeah, yeah, I want sir.
Fine,
Sure.
fine. आ जाएगा. No issue.
आ गया.
All right, all right. बाकी
So
सब.
let me thank.
Hmm.
Shall I start?
Sure, sure, sure.
So with Dr. Dinesh Mathur at the helm of affairs, all the rituals will take its time, and he has welcomed me with the bouquet as well as the prayer. So he has invoked all the god and goddesses, which are really going to give us some gyan today evening. So let me thank all the Rajasthan team, Dr. U.S. Agrawal, Dr. Lalit, and Dr. Dinesh Mathur sir. So I begin with my presentation, that is Palmoplantar keratodermas. So common presentation and many times frustrating to diagnose and treat, because this forms quite a large number of patients who come with this presentation. So if you can focus on this case, this young man who is a salesman who presented with lesions which were much more diffusely distributed on his soles, and the palms were also affected, and you can see the henna has been put to reduce the symptoms. The family history was positive in number of family members, including his real sister, and he is born out of consanguineous marriage, and his predominant symptoms were discomfort, itching, and pain. Of course, we did see his hairs, nails, and mucosae and complete skin examination, which was unremarkable. And he did not have any of the systemic associations like hearing loss or involvement of eyes, etc. So just going by his history, we just made a pedigree chart. As you can see here, he is the patient who is involved, affected. His real sister is involved. Two of his siblings have already died. And if you see the family tree, his grandmother is affected, and even the great grandfather is affected. And there are a number of people in the family, males and females, who are affected. So by this chart, we can decide that the disease is autosomal recessively transmitted, and this is a form of diffuse palmoplantar keratodoma. So these patients are also not very uncommon with COVID era. The patient has used bleach and developed irritant contact dermatitis, and palmar eczema is something which is very, very common and should not be confused with PPKDs. Here you can see a beautiful case wherein you can see the DLE on the palms, and look at this old man with erythroderma, which is of recent onset, 3 months old, and look at the involvement of palms with a lot of fissuring, erythema, and scaling. He has history of alopecia, weight loss, hepatosplenomegaly, and lymphadenopathy. So once in a while, we can come across such patient who has Sézary syndrome also, and showing involvement of palms and soles. Few more pictures wherein you can see palmoplantar lesions beautifully shown in this patient, and you can see the palmoplantar psoriasis in a case of psoriatic arthritis patients. So now introducing the topic, that is palmoplantar keratoderma. So what are those? They are heterogeneous group of hereditary as well as acquired disorders of cornification. And what we see clinically is prominent hyperkeratosis affecting palms and soles. And inherited palmoplantar keratodermas, they represent many times a syndromic phenotype with extracutaneous manifestations. An acquired palmoplantar keratoderma can be of infective origin, as I showed you in one of the slides. It can be because of inflammatory disorder like psoriasis. It can be drug induced, or it can be even associated with cancer. And it is very, very important to determine the specific subtype of palmoplantar keratoderma, and we have to recognize the associated features so as to manage the patients properly. Coming to the nuances in classification, so there is no single classification which encompasses all aspects of this typical disease, that is inherited palmoplantar keratoderma, which will address genotype as well as phenotype. The current nomenclature is non-uniform and there are too many eponyms. And we need to remember that PPKs may represent a component of other genodermatosis such as ichthyosis, erythrokeratodermas, epidermolysis bullosa, as well as ectodermal dysplasias. So just to make the things simple, in context of PPKs, what we need to remember is to classify it as per the morphology. Say for example, diffuse involving the whole surface. Then there is focal variety, which can be presenting as either coin shape, that is nummular type, or it can be even striate. And remember, a distinct third type is punctate type of keratoderma. So while we address the patients who walk in with PPK, what are the important things to notice is don't forget to see for transgradients. What does it mean? That is extension of hyperkeratosis onto the dorsal aspects of hands and feet. Not only see the dorsal aspects, but also try to see other areas of the body like elbows and knees. See whether the patient gives history of progradients. It progresses with the age. Is it associated with hyperhidrosis or not? And if it is associated with hyperhidrosis, look for the features of maceration, malodor, pain, and recurrent fungal infections and even bacterial infections. And patients may even experience blistering in the initial years. Look for pseudoenhum, that is keratotic constriction bands around the digits, which can lead to autoamputation. Do see for hair and nail changes. Try to evaluate the patient whether he's got ichthyosis or not, and if it is adult onset, acquired one, and many of the syndromic PPKDs are associated with malignancies. So now coming to the first topic, that is hereditary PPKs. Many of the PPKs, they do not develop until the initial months of the life and maybe even later on. So the onset and severity depends on the mechanical stress. That is when the child learns to walk, the friction of pressure, the friction of walking, then the child will develop the keratodermas. Initially it will be focal and then later on it evolves into the diffuse type and from infancy to adulthood. Many times the hereditary PPKs present first time in adulthood, and there can be spontaneous improvement as well as recurrences over a period of time. And even in the same family, there will be variability in presentation. And coming to the etiology of this particular problem, that is hereditary palmoplantar keratoderma, as you can see, this is a very busy slide and there are a number of genes which have been identified which causes hereditary palmoplantar keratoderma. So we should know about various keratins which are responsible for causing PPKs, like keratin 9, keratin 1, then aquaporin 5, loricrene, gap junction B, 2, 6, 1, TRPV3, desmoglein, desmoplakin, keratin 1, C, 1B, 1A, as well as keratin 16, 17, and connexin 26, 23, and 30. So these are number of genes which have been identified for as etiology of hereditary palmoplantar keratodermas. Now coming to the nuances of keratins, how do they get involved and which ones will cause what disease? So we need to remember that exclusively keratin 9 is seen in suprabasal stratified epithelium, whereas keratin 16 and keratin 17 is seen only in palmoplantar epidermis along with appendages. So thereby keratin 9 has got specificity in context of palmoplantar keratoderma along with keratin 1 and keratin 10. And keratin 16 and 17 we'll discuss later on in context of pachyonychia congenita. Now coming to another important aspect in context of PPKDs, we should remember what is the role played by connexins. So 6 connexins, they gather and form one connexon. And this connexon will form with central core one gap junction. And this is also very important in context of number of PPKs wherein connexin 26 and connexin 30 is involved and which causes palmoplantar keratoderma. What about loricrin? We know that it is very, very important and vital as far as the skin barrier function is required. And loricrin also does play a little part in one of the cause of PPK, which is also labeled as loricrin keratoderma. What is the role of protease related effects? These are also important as this is important because for epidermal differentiation. When this mechanism gets disturbed, there is naturally definite disturbance in the cell cycle, resulting into psoriasiform lesions seen in Papillon-Lefevre syndrome. What is the role of desmosomes in context of PPK? This slide shows beautifully. So we have to remember the role of desmoglein, desmoplakin, and placoglobin in context of PPKs. Now coming to the diffuse PPKs. So how do we approach patients who present with diffuse PPK? So always see for transgradients, that is involvement of dorsal hinge and fit. Try to diagnose and make a pedigree charts whether this is autosomal dominant or autosomal recessive, and do not forget to see for systemic associations. So autosomal dominant conditions, as far as diffuse PPK are concerned, there is a long list of it: Grether, Vohwinkel, Camisa, Hurriers, Claustens, and Bart-Pumphrey syndrome. Whereas autosomal recessive conditions are Meldy-Meleda, Papillon-Lefevre, Olmsted, and Nagashima type. If there is no transgradients, then there are 3 conditions which fall in this category of diffuse PPK, that is Unna-Dost, Warner, and Naxos disease. So we have to remember, if diffuse palmoplantar keratoderma does not have any of this association, systemic associations, and then it becomes little easier for us to diagnose them. Warner-Unna-Dost typically has epidermolytic changes while we biopsy it, whereas Nagashima and Kimonis have non-epidermolytic changes in the in the epidermis. Whereas Bothnia type is characterized by non-epidermolytic changes in the epidermis, as well as it will turn into white spongy appearance while exposing to the water. Grether can be having either epidermolytic or non-epidermolytic pathogenesis while we see the biopsy, and it will have transgradients as well as progradients, whereas Meldy-Meleda is a mutilating type of palmoplantar keratoderma with non-epidermolytic changes in the epidermis. Here you can focus on a patient who has got diffuse involvement of his palm and soles with bright red margin at the sharp cutoff line between the keratoderma and the non-affected skin. So that is very, very important. If you find a very sharp and erythematous border, then this patient falls into epidermolytic type of PPK, which is Dost-Unna-Warner subtype. So what is Dost-Unna syndrome? It is an autosomal dominant subtype wherein the mutations in keratin 1 and keratin 2 is seen. The children will have thick yellow hyperkeratosis of palms, whereas adults will present with confluent hyperkeratosis with waxy surface as shown in this picture. And of course, when you see the biopsy, which we are not really routinely taking, but it should be a practice to take a biopsy of hereditary PPKs that will show epidermolytic hyperkeratosis, vacuolated supraabasal keratinocytes, along with ovoid eosinophilic inclusions. The Warner subtypes looks little dirty. There is no transgradients. and mutations are in keratin 1 and 9 genes, and histology will show epidermolysis. Now, what are the PPKs which are characterized by epidermolytic hyperkeratosis? Dhorst Warner Rudnar subtype, as well as unilateral palmoplantar verrucous nevus, familial tylosis, as well as Grethos. Now, coming to the Grethos syndrome, it is autosomal dominant condition, which is characterized by K1 gene missense mutation. Onset is early in the infancy, and you can see the typical involvement of the area which covers the Achilles tendon. So it has got diffuse transgradients, and it extends over the Achilles tendon. And of course, you can see epidermolytic changes as well as in the granular cell layer. It is very important to even see where you find the epidermolytic changes. Many of the conditions will have suprabasal, but here you will see in the granular layer. Coming to another important diagnosis in diffuse palmoplantar keratoderma is Meldy-Maleda, wherein the mutation occurs in SLUB1. It is autosomal recessive condition. Transgradients starts in early infancy. You can see the hyperkeratotic plaques on the knees and elbows, and it is associated with hyperhidrosis, maceration, malodor, frequent superinfections with dermatophyte as well as petiate keratolysis, and it is mutilating. There will be formation of pseudo-enhum as well as loss of digits, and past staining should be always done to rule out dermatophytic infection. So you can see the multiple constrictions, and this is characteristic of mutilating PPKs. So which are the PPKs wherein we can see this pseudo-enhum? The first and foremost is Meldy-Maleda, Vohwinkel syndrome, Loriquine keratoderma, Olmsted, Papillon-Lefevre, Clouston, Pachyonychia congenita, and diffuse epidermolytic PPK. Now coming to the diffuse PPKs which are associated with systemic features. Say for example, hearing impairment, which is seen in Vohwinkel syndrome, Bardet-Fumry syndrome, as well as many other conditions. The Hurrier syndrome has high risk of association with SCC, whereas nail changes and hair changes are seen typically with Clouston syndrome, Olmsted syndrome, Papillon-Lefevre, Loriquine, Cleek, etc. And do not forget to examine the heart in context of PPK, which is the child who is presenting with woolly hair, because it is associated with cardiomyopathy, and the diagnosis will be Naxos disease. So this is a patient who presented with thick hyperkeratotic skin lesions, which you can see there is a sharp delineation. Even the hyperkeratosis is covering the fingers, and you can see the star-shaped keratosis on the knuckles. So this is because of mutation in connexin 26. It is associated with sensory hearing loss. It is very, very important to identify, because in infancy it may be difficult to pick up this sensory neural hearing loss. The Kamisa syndrome, wherein mutation occurs in Loriquine, and it will definitely present with ichthyosis at birth, which can be of colloidal baby type, and the type of PPK will be honeycomb, and which develops in childhood. Of course, these children can also develop pseudo-enhum. How do you differentiate it from Vohwinkel? There is absence of deafness as well as presence of ichthyosis in Kamisas, whereas deafness is definitely a finding in Vohwinkel syndrome, and there is no ichthyosis in Vohwinkel syndrome. Coming to another syndrome, which is Bardet-Fumry, again characterized by involvement of connexin 26, autosomal dominant condition. You can see prominent knuckle pads and leukonychia associated with hearing loss and honeycomb type of PPK. Hurrier syndrome, autosomal dominant condition, occurs in infancy, and PPK usually initially there will be diffuse parchment like membrane on the surface of palms and soles. Later on, the child develops circumscribed hyperkeratosis, and the typical finding of Hurrier syndrome is scleroatrophy and sclerodactyly with loss of dermatoglyphics. It is also associated with hypoplastic nail changes. There is high risk of developing SCC in these patients, which is more than 100 times. And typical finding in biopsy is complete absence of Langerhans cell. Coming to another form of diffuse PPK with transgradients is Papillon-Lefevre syndrome. wherein you will see mutation in CTSC gene. It is autosomal recessive condition. Diffuse transgradient PPK with erythema, pseudoenhum, hyperkeratotic plaques on the knees, which is beautifully seen in this child, and loss of early dentition as well as late dentition. By the age of 15, the child usually becomes edentulous. And if you take X-ray at that stage, you can see the floating in air appearance. Papillon-Lay fever is also associated with recurrent infections of even internal organs. So we have to be very, very sure, and we have to pick up this diagnosis early. The other variant of Papillon-Lay fever is Hayam-Monk syndrome, wherein there are no infections, only the nail changes are very prominent. Coming to the Clausen syndrome, which is also known as hydrotic ectodermal dysplasia subtype 2, which occurs due to missense mutation in B6 gene, gap junction B6 gene, and it is autosomal dominant condition. Palmoplantar keratoderma with lot of nail changes, hypotrichosis, alopecia, but teeth and sweat is normal. You can see the hypotrichosis of the eyebrows associated with a lot of nail dystrophy. One more in the list is Olmsted, wherein mutation in keratin 1 and 10 is seen, mutilating type, which is characterized by development of periorificial hyperkeratotic plaques, and it is associated with itching, pain, alopecia, and these patients do develop SCC and malignant melanoma even. Nexus syndrome, child born with woolly hair, autosomal recessive condition, the mutation which is seen in placoglobin, and these children have cardiac arrhythmias and they can die because of heart failure by the age of 14 to 15. So it is very, very important to pick up these children early in their life. And you can see, now we will talk about the focal PPKs. This was all about diffuse palmoplantar keratodermas. Now coming to the focal ones. So there is, most of the focal PPKs are associated with many other features like Pachyonychia congenita, then Howell-Evans, Richner-Henhart, and Carvajal. Of course, it does occur isolated entity also, that is Watcher's PPK. So I'll talk about my cases, which we have seen. Pachyonychia congenita, we all know that there are multiple mutations which have been identified in the keratin 6A, 6B, 6C, as well as 16 and 17. It is autosomal dominant condition. The cardinal manifestations are nail changes, focal keratoderma, and severe plantar pain. Plantar keratoderma it manifests as calluses, fissures, and thickened skin, and they are yellow in color. Frictional blisters can also develop. Here you can see the nail changes, which are typically described as omega nails. You can see this child, infant, who was brought to us with a lot of nail changes. Look at the nail changes the mother has. This child also had natal teeth. So he fits into Pachyonychia congenita subtype 2. The mother also had leukokeratosis. You can see other findings which are not uncommon in Pachyonychia congenita, like follicular hyperkeratosis and seborrheic multiplex. This will occur in patients who have keratin 17 mutations. These patients can also develop hoarseness of voice and palmoplantar hyperhidrosis. Look at this patient who had Pachyonychia congenita, and he responded partially to acitretin after 3 months of therapy. Howell-Evans syndrome, which is again a focal type of PPK, at an autosomal dominant condition, and development of esophageal carcinoma is seen in 5th decade. Of course, keratoderma will start earlier in the childhood, maybe in adolescent. This is Richner-Henhart syndrome, the autosomal recessive condition characterized clinically by photophobia, focal painful hyperkeratosis, as well as corneal erosions, mental retardation. Carvajal syndrome is a type of focal PPKDs wherein mutation occurs in desmoplakin. Striate palmoplantar keratoderma, left ventricular cardiomyopathy, and woolly hair. You can see the child and his sibling both have woolly hair and both had cardiomyopathy. Now coming to another variant of focal is striate PPK. wherein the mutation occurs in desmoplekin. We can see the linear bands, keratotic bands on the palms and soles, and usually it develops in adolescence or even early adulthood. So this doesn't start right from the birth. Now coming to the last variant of hereditary palmoplantar keratoderma is PPK. So again, it has got isolated form as well as associated features. So there are three subtypes of punctate PPK: type 1, type 2, type 3, and there are also systemic associations. So we will just take up the cases which we have seen. So this is a case which does not have any systemic association, which is characterized by small keratotic papules on the palmoplantar surface, and papules are painful. The central keratotic core is translucent initially, but it later becomes opaque or verrucous, and the mechanical stress will worsen the lesions. It is autosomal dominant condition. So we have to remember that on biopsy, we'll see focal hypogranulosis in this particular condition. This is the condition punctate keratoderma of Palmer crease, which is seen exclusively in African population. But when we see the Palmer pits, we have so many differential diagnoses for our PGs to offer to us. Spiny keratoderma, we have not seen much, but if it occurs in adult later on in the life, you should think about internal malignancy. So this is the patient with marginal papular keratoderma. It is autosomal dominant condition. Usually it begins in childhood, maybe in the adolescence. Clinically characterized by small keratotic papules along the margins of fingers. And typically you have 4 or 5 differential for this condition, including palmoplantar porokeratosis, the nevi, and so on. But particularly if you take biopsy, what is seen is fragmentation and degeneration of elastic fibers if it is marginal papular keratoderma. Now there are so many genodermatosis which are associated with PPKs, like Darier's disease, epidermolysis bullosa, particularly Kindler, and EB simplex, Dowling mirror type. Then there are certain ichthyosis which are associated with PPK, and of course erythrokeratoderma, and even progressive symmetric erythrokeratoderma can be associated with PPK. Of course, there is long list to remember for the postgraduates like Click syndrome, Sadnick, Madnick, and Kidd syndrome. Here you can see a female who presented with Darier's disease with a lot of roughness on the palm, and her child had Palmer pits. Again, a patient who has got ichthyosis hystrix, you can see, and the patient has got even severe keratoderma, and even there is tapering of the fingers. Now coming to the acquired PPKs, that also should be kept in mind after the hereditary palmoplantar keratoderma. So which are the conditions wherein acquired PPKs can be seen? So it can be seen with pityriasis rubra pilaris, keratoderma climactericum, aquagenic PPK. It can be seen with reactive arthritis. It can be seen with even dermatomyositis, especially antisynthetase syndrome. It can be associated with hypothyroidism, myxedema, lymphedema, as well as arsenic keratosis. And again, if it occurs in the 6th or 7th decade, and if it is acquired, we should think about cancers also. So what is keratoderma climactericum? Typically, it affects women who are in the perimenopausal age and female who are obese. It gets aggravated in winter, and hyperkeratosis begin over the pressure points of heel. It is non-transgradients, and formation of fissures make walking very, very painful. Here you can see a female who was presented with thick hyperkeratotic plaque with a lot of fissuring, and who was 45 years of age. PRP sandals, not uncommon to see in a patient of PRP. Psoriasis, palmoplantar psoriasis is also quite common in our setup. So we need to differentiate it from acquired palmoplantar keratodermas as well as hereditary palmoplantar keratodermas. This is keratoderma blenorigica, which we saw in a case of reactive arthritis. What about PPK and cancer? So what are the cancers which are associated with acquired PPK? bronchial carcinoma is associated with acquired PPK. And I think it's now very, very common, even in young patients who are developing CAs. Again, remember the breast, colon, and kidney carcinoma can be associated with spiny kind of keratodoma. And we should not forget the entity which is striped palms, that is rugosity and acanthosis nigricans, which occurs on the surface of PAM in context of malignancy involving lung, stomach, and genitourinary tract. Here you can see a patient of Sézary syndrome who has got keratoderma. So for us, T-cell lymphoma is also important, and we have to see the patient's palms and soles when they present with erythroderma. So what is aquagenic PPK? A word about it. See, the patient will develop pebbly surface after exposure to water. And this onset is typically seen in girls and women, second decade of life. And you can see tiny papules which represent dilated acrosyringeal ostia when you look through dermoscopy. And it should be differentiated from hereditary papulotranslucent acrokeratoderma, wherein the lesions will persist once they develop, whereas after you stop exposing to the water, it will disappear for aquagenic PPK. Here you can see the typical book picture, which is taken from one of the standard textbooks. After exposure to water, there is appearance of white papules, which look like pebbles on the palm, very small pebbles. Arsenic keratosis, very common in West Bengal, arsenic poisoning. So how does it present? Patient will have small cone-like areas of hyperkeratosis on the palms and soles. We have to diagnose this condition because these patients are likely to develop SCC on these lesions. The drug-induced keratoderma, the list is getting longer by the day. Typically, what are the drugs which can cause keratoderma? Lithium, verapamil, venlafaxine, capecitabine, imatinib, sorafenib, sunitinib, and hydroxyurea. Here you can see one of our patients who developed these blisters on the palms because of imatinib, and all of them resolved, wherein the skin got exfoliated. So if you look at this patient at this stage, you might think that this is some form of keratoderma. Or initially, she had painful blisters, which healed and resulted into exfoliation of the skin. So we have to even take thorough history in a patient. So what are the infectious causes which can even present as keratoderma, and what we have seen in our practice? So the commonest one being Tinea manum, Norwegian scabies, secondary syphilis, and lepromatous and borderline lepromatous leprosy, wherein we do see patients developing a lot of autonomic neuropathy, and they have large keratotic plaque on the heel with deep fissures. Here you can see a patient who presented with syphilites on the palms and soles, and it is almost covering almost 2/3 of his palms and instep of the soles. And this is typical syphilitic cornea. And nowadays we see a lot of syphilis presenting as palmoplantar syphilids. Maybe our skin type is very dark and we're not able to appreciate that rosy yellow rash on the body, but this is a very, very common presentation. And this should never be confused with any of the PPKs. You can see a lady who presented with Norwegian scabies, and you can see the involvement of her whole body along with rib spaces, and the palms are also involved in this patient. Tinea manum, Tinea pedis, you can see the patient has got involvement of both hands as well as both soles. So how do we evaluate such patients when they present with palmoplantar keratoderma? The first and foremost, if the child has got early onset of the disease and there is family history and multiple family members are affected, then try to establish that is it autosomal dominant or autosomal recessive condition. Try to make a pedigree chart, and it is not difficult to make, and you can definitely pick up whether this is autosomal dominant or autosomal recessive condition. Always examine mucous membranes. Not only the skin of palms and soles, the entire skin surface should be examined, because if the patient has got subtle ichthyosis, you can pick up that If the patient has got involvement of the elbows and knees, this is also very, very important. Apart from examining hairs and nails and mucous membrane, and try to exclude extracutaneous manifestations, especially when we suspect that patient might have hereditary PPKs, whether it is diffuse, whether it is punctate, whether it is focal. Of course, we have to have genetic analysis for having the final diagnosis. And if the patient is young and patient is already having PPK hereditary, and he or she wants to father a child or mother a child, definitely, what is the role of prenatal diagnosis in such patients? These are all very important and pertinent points which should be thought about. So what should be the approach if the patient presents with only isolated diffuse PPK? So first and foremost, see for transgradients. If the transgradients is positive and if there is severe mutilation, then the diagnosis become very simple. That is multi-meleda, which is autosomal recessive condition. And if there is less severe mutilation, then if you find something on the Achilles tendon, the transgradients going over that area, then think about Grethers disease, which is autosomal dominant. If there is no transgradients and if there is presence of knuckle pads, think about non-epidermolytic palmoplantar keratoderma, wherein keratin 1 gene is involved and it is autosomal dominant condition. And there is if hyperkeratosis around umbilicus, areola, knees and elbows, then think about epidermolytic palmoplantar keratoderma, wherein the gene which is affected is 9, then 1, and it is also autosomal dominant condition. So first and foremost, you have to see for the transgradients. And if there is transgradients, you have two differentials. If you don't have transgradients, you have another diagnosis. Now coming to associations. What are if the patient has got diffuse palmoplantar keratoderma and associated findings? Say for example, if the patient has got pruritus, mutilation, periorificial and intertriginous plaques, then it becomes Olmsted, wherein mutation is seen in TRPV1 because TRPV1 also is a very important chemokine in the pathway of pruritus. If the patient has got periodontitis, pyogenic infection, then the diagnosis is Papillon-Lefevre. We know that it is autosomal recessive condition and cathepsin C gene is affected. If there are no infections, only onychogryphosis, arachnodactyly, then it becomes prototype of Papillon-Lefevre, that is Haim-Monk syndrome, that is also again autosomal recessive. And if the honeycomb pattern of keratoderma is seen, then there are few diagnoses like Vohwinkel syndrome, which I showed you, which is characterized by starfish keratosis, deafness. What is involved is connexin 26. And if there is ichthyosis, then think about Loricquine keratoderma. Patient has got sclerodactyly, then think about Hurrier syndrome. If the patient has got concurrent ichthyosis also, which if it is non-erythrodermic, then it becomes ichthyosis vulgaris. If it is erythrodermic, then there are again, you have to further classify these patients. Epidermolytic ichthyosis. If it is erythrodermic, then it becomes autosomal recessive congenital ichthyosis associated with PPK. And this can be also seen with ectodermal dysplasias, as we saw in our case of Closten syndrome. And it is also seen in context of erythrokeratoderma, which can be variabilis or it can be progressive symmetric also. And do not forget to ask the history of photosensitivity and poikiloderma, which is characteristically seen in Kindler syndrome. And you have to see for EDS, that is Dowling-Meara diffuse type. So how do we specify which is the mutant keratin which is causing PPK? So for that, the only answer is gene analysis. And genetic testing registry gives all the information about genetic tests which are meant for each hereditary type of PPK. And of course, skin biopsy will help little, but then what will help is electron microscopy, which we do not have access to. Again, gene analysis also very difficult to get it done because every test costs 15,000 to 20,000 rupees and there are a number of family members affected. So it is very, very difficult to counsel such patients to undertake gene analysis also. So how do we manage? Hereditary PPKs, they persist lifelong, significantly affect quality of life. There is no cure available which is specific for hereditary PPKs. So it's very, very important to do genetic counseling, and you can provide symptomatic relief by asking patients to wear socks if there is hyperhidrosis. Patients can be advised to wear custom-made footwear to reduce mechanical stress, overcome pain in activities of daily living. Moisturizers, keratolytics, propylene glycol, 70%, salicylic acid, 5 to 10%. But while you prescribe to the child with diffuse PPKD, you have to see that the child does not develop salicylism. It's very, very important. 10 to 30% urea is another option, 10% lactic acid. Topical retinoids, as including tazarotene, can be utilized for the few areas. Of course, calcipotriol has been tried with very limited success. And if you have secondary keratodermas because of either psoriasis, then you can think about retinoids as well as UVA therapy. If there is inflammatory component, topical steroids can be added for secondary infections, treat with appropriate antibiotics. Pairing of calluses, mechanical debridement with dental drill, etc. can be performed. For specific therapies, say for example, in oculocutaneous tyrosinema, that is Richter-Hanhart syndrome, what is important is to restrict the phenylalanine and tyrosine. So how can you restrict? Ask the child, mother not to give child milk, eggs, nuts, and chicken and fish, because this will result into mental retardation because of the high level of tyrosine in the serum and urine. So this is the specific therapy for only one condition, which is inborn error of metabolism. But if the patient has got hyperhidrosis, we can use iontophoresis, anticholinergics, intradermal botulinum A, and few of the patients of hereditary PPK do respond to even vitamin D therapy. So what is the role of systemic retinoids? So we should be using in a low dose. Start for children at very low dose, 0.5 milligram per kilogram body weight. For adults, we can use 0.5 to 1 milligram. We can also use isotretinoin, which is a cheaper option in the dose of 1 milligram per kilogram. And it should be used for severe and disabling PPKs. It improves hyperkeratosis, but it can make the erythema worse. It can make the pain worse. Remember this, because this, and also it triggers epidermolysis, especially in patients with epidermolytic PPK. So that will increase the risk of blister formation. So in these patients, always start with very low dose, and we have to be aware about the long-term side effects of this therapy while we initiate them in infancy or in the early childhood. What about alitretinoin, which is utilized for treatment of refractory palmoplantar keratoderma in the dose of 30 milligram per day. There's case report about this particular molecule. And there's a number of surgical measures like dermabrasion for the large painful calluses, then CO2 laser, fractional. Even excision can be performed followed by grafting. And if there are hyperkeratotic constrictions, say pseudoenhum, which are unresponsive to oral retinoids, they can be also treated surgically to prevent spontaneous amputation. Now coming to the experimental therapies, that is olortinib, which is epidermal growth factor inhibitor, 100 milligram and 150 milligram per day, improved palmoplantar keratoderma in patients of Pachyonychia congenita. But that took 2 years, long years. And olortinib is also used in patients of Olmsted syndrome. And of course, gene therapy with small interfering RNA, double-stranded RNA molecules, again can be utilized for patients of Pachyonychia congenita. But again, the injections are very, very painful, and this therapy is largely unavailable to most of the people. What about rosuvastatin and simvastatin? Why they are important in context of Pachyonychia congenita? Because if the patients of Pachyonychia congenita who has got keratin 6A gene mutation, And this simvastatin and rosuvastatin, this inhibit STAT1 expression, thereby inhibiting keratin 6A promoter activity. The dose is 5 mg daily for at least 6 months. Topical sirolimus has been utilized for pachyonychia congenita, and it inhibits expression of keratin 6 and keratin 16 gene. And that is how it works for the patients of painful palmoplantar keratoderma. So what are the take home points? PPKs, they are common, confusing, difficult to classify, difficult to reach at the correct diagnosis because most of us have no access for genetic testing, especially for the hereditary palmoplantar keratoderma, and the management remains challenging for the treating physicians, and it is quite painful for the patients to suffer from it for lifetime, and it impairs the quality of life of patients significantly because of lot of pain. It hampers the daily activity of the patients, and keratolytics and retinoids, they offer transient benefit, especially for the PPKDs which are hereditary. And again, the eponyms and classifications we can always refer to. However, one should never miss the systemic associations like deafness in hereditary forms and cancers especially, which is very sinister in acquired forms. So we should keep in mind the systemic associations also in hereditary forms, and if it is acquired, your mind should be aware that even it can be due to cancer in the patient. So that should really warrant a busy practitioner to look for the appropriate investigations and adequate referrals. Genetic testing is very, very difficult. We don't have access to it, most of us. And again, the doctor who is geneticist, they charge very heavily. Every test will cost more than 15,000 to 20,000 rupees. And there are a number of family members who are involved. So it becomes practically impossible to talk to the patients to undergo these tests, even if they are available, at least in teaching departments like ours. So it's very, very important that if we learn the clinical skills, we can definitely diagnose these conditions and offer that adequate treatment at the right time so as to make their life little better. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, Dr. Bela.
Yeah,
And,
thank you. Sir.
Thank you very much. It was a very good lecture, and lots of appreciation. We will take up the questions and appreciations later on. First, I'll Dr. Lalit.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Lalit.
Yes, sir. I'm here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you please do the this thing, virtual felicitation of?
Yes, sir. First of all, let me congratulate Dr. Bela for an excellent talk. She made this common, confusing, and challenging topic look very easy and simple with the wonderful picture gallery that she always has. And I many times borrow pictures from her.
Thank you.
And she has a huge collection of wonderful pictures. Now, we all should appreciate that PPKDs not only impair the quality of life, but they can also lead to mortality. Particularly, they are associated with malignancy. So we have to be, alert enough to identify these conditions and classify these conditions appropriately. Although the management is not very satisfactory, but at least you can offer some partial benefit to most of your patients. So once again, thank you and congratulations for a wonderful talk. Particularly must have been very, very useful for postgraduates.
Yeah.
And it's my proud privilege to honor you with the virtual, memento that Professor Dinesh Mathur has arranged for you.
Thank you so much.
Now comes the question answer session.
Yep.
And this thing. So let us take up the chat box. A lot many. First of all, Dr. Lalit, excellent presentation which you have already spoken. Dr. Rajesh Rajgopalan has appreciated. Dr. Arun Joshi wants to know how easy or difficult it is biopsy to do in palmoplantar keratoderma. which type of biopsy and site is better to take from? Would you like to tell?
Yes, yes, it is because a lot of hyperkeratosis is there, and when you take biopsy from the palms and soles, they are very painful.
Hmm.
And again, you end up taking only the epidermis many times because it's quite a thick structure. If you normally see, the palmoplantar surface is different than the volar surface because of the presence of stratum lucidum. It is very thick. Otherwise, also in normal patients. So try to take a punch biopsy, or you can take a biopsy, surgical biopsy with the help of a
punch,
surgeon.
larger,
Larger, more than 6 millimeter, or at least 6 millimeter of biopsy, and from the fully evolved lesion. See, it is important to take from the fully evolved lesion.
And then
No,
Dr. Rajesh Buddhadev, he has got some Dr. Rajesh Buddhadev, what he is excellent in talk and crisp and clear. He just appreciated a lot. And Dr. Balakrishnan Nair wants to ask any role of biologics in treatment of palmoplantar keratoderma.
Yes, if it is psoriasis, palmoplantar psoriasis, then you can use etanercept and TNF alphas, but not in PPKDs. Not in PPKDs.
Right.
Not in PPKDs.
Then Arun Joshi wants to ask the management of a heterogeneous group. No, just very much appreciative. And Dr. Rajesh, occupation-induced palmoplantar keratoderma. Kindly enlighten the evaluation and the treatment. Any
Yeah.
occupation-induced?
Yeah, it is very, very common, as I showed you the initial pictures. So one of the patient developed because of the bleaching solution, the acute irritant dermatitis, and the other picture showed the chronic,
bleaching is another thing. But nowadays, in this corona era, we will be having a lot of these things. Probably we might
bleaching and the sanitizers also because of the alcohol which is there. But then it is more common on the volar surfaces than the palmar surfaces because of the sanitizers. That's what we have seen.
Now,
the occupational keratoderma, see, it's again, it's a big topic, and you have to have that patch testing kit with you, which is Indian standard series, and you have to ask the history. If the patient is for example is a mason, then you will test the nickel and chromium and etc. So the list goes on like as per the occupation of the patient, and there is I think series of Indian standard series is available not only for this occupational dermatologist but also for the cosmetic series now.
Well, our senior most people, Dr. Mariaza, Dr. Narenjan Nagpurji, and other people, those who want to comment, and Dr. US.
Dinesh,
Yes.
Bela,
Very
good presentation. Have you used anytime simple treatment like a high doses of vitamin A in one of these keratodermas? Because retinoids and all may be very expensive.
So you can use high dose of vitamin A, especially in cases with diffuse palmoplantar keratodermas. It really works, and I would like to use for all the acquired hyper PPKs.
Because that
Bela,
sorry,
Bela.
Yes, sir.
It's a very good presentation, Bela. I must appreciate. More than that, the arsenical keratosis is a misdiagnosis. In the city of Bombay, we see not necessarily from West Bengal, but the contaminated water supply. Is again just to. I'm not trying to comment on you. I'm just trying to help you. Even the contaminated water will have an arsenical content estimation. A lot of laboratory in Bombay does this study, and it is not necessarily restricted to the West Bengal, and that's why I'm just trying to say it can be a misdiagnosis.
That's right.
Sorry,
I just mentioned one state where it is reported oft repeatedly from West Bengal about the arsenic poisoning and skin changes because of arsenic. That's why, for the sake of it, I mentioned that it is quite often reported and presented from West Bengal. That was the only point of taking the name of West Bengal. It can occur anywhere.
Well, Dr. Basanti Devi was here, Dr. Yasmin, and anybody else who wants to comment? Dr. US? Yes, please.
Yes, sir. It was a very nice presentation. I think she has covered everything, whatever is in the palmoplantar keratoderma, one of the most untouched and complicated topics. Madam, do you agree with me that the most of the cases coming to our dermatology practice are acquired type of the keratoderma?
Yes, yes. Yes, yes.
So,
That's what.
yeah,
That's why if
whatever,
you remember my series, I showed first case as hereditary and rest of
yeah,
my 5 pictures were acquired. If you can
they are acquired.
recollect the initial, my
Yeah,
slides, because we don't have to forget about hereditary PPKs, but then what you see much more common is acquired ones. That's why I showed you 5, 6 representative pictures.
yes, madam. And then whatever syndromes and whatever these names of the different diseases have been given, do you agree that there are only few cases which have been found in the some particular region, particular country, particular blaze, like Maldimelda has been mentioned from a particular blaze only,
Yeah, yeah.
Malda.
See, that is near, it actually first reported from that particular island near Dalmatian Sea. But we have patients of Maldi Melida, which I showed you. With most of the pictures are from my collection. Only 2, 3 pictures I have taken from the textbook. So we have all the forms of hereditary PPKs. We have identified them on clinical basis and by relevant systemic examination. And we have seen even Carvajal and Naxos also. So it's very, very important to see a patient in a perspective. Say you examine the nails, you examine the heart, you examine the mucosae, and you also see for the eye examination, depending on the clinical presentation. Not that you will do for every patient.
You
They
said
go
about genetic intervention,
People are asking
genetic testing,
how to.
prenatal diagnosis, and I'm not sure how much it is practiced.
Not practiced at all.
Correct.
Not practiced. It is not at all practiced. But then we come across many
Oh,
people
sure.
who have, consanguineous marriage, not only in Muslims, but there are so many other communities
Yes,
wherein
Yes, yes.
consanguinity is very common and
Dr.
which we are not
Suhail
aware of.
was here. Suhail Amin, Dr. Suhail Amin, I saw him. Is he left? Throughout he was sitting, but probably he was still gone.
So traditionally, what we believe is only the Muslims have consanguinity, but it's not true because there's so many communities, tribal communities, they have consanguinity. So we
Yes,
just have to open our eyes and mind to these cases as well.
true.
I think the other reason is that you have collection of all these syndromes because you have more open mind and eyes to see and investigate. Many times in the busy OPD we just forget and write the treatment.
Exactly.
This may be the this may be the cause.
But
That's
Bela,
why I
how
choose this topic because this is an orphan topic. Nobody likes to really pay attention to it. थोड़ा केराटोनिक देख लो थोड़ा मॉइस्चराइजर लिख लो हो जाएगा but it's not that easy. That's why I selected this topic.
the people
But
want
Bella,
to
it
know
is not easy to treat.
Yeah,
how to
It's,
very
differentiate.
it's very
difficult.
difficult. Nothing satisfactory yet.
That's what.
By the time you make a
Dr.
diagnosis of a
Bela,
syndrome,
Yes,
there's
yes.
a question.
every hospital.
Dr. Supriya wants to ask how to differentiate hyperkeratotic palmoplantar eczema with the keratoderma. That is a very common situation. We all deal with it.
So
Okay,
history is very, very important. History is very, very important. What is the onset of disease? Is it since early childhood? Is it since infancy? Where was the child having erythema at birth? Was there any presence of parchment like membrane on the body? So these are all the differentiating points which to rule out hereditary keratoderma are very helpful. But for eczema, hyperkeratotic eczema versus acquired keratoderma, again, history will be very much important. And if you biopsy eczema, you will find the changes of eczema there. Whereas acquired PPKDs will show you orthohyperkeratosis. And there won't be any changes of eczema like
Sure.
you see spongiostic dermatitis and all.
Madam, one more question, please, if you allow me.
Oh, sure,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, sure.
What is this crack heel? There is a very famous OPC product also to heal the crack heels. Does it also come under keratoderma, keratoderma, or whether you mentioned the climatic type of the keratoderma, so palm keratoderma. So does it also come in that this is a very common condition, crack heels.
Yeah, it's very common, especially people who are doing a lot of household work, wet work. It is very, very common in females, and especially in winter, their heels always crack. So I have seen people, and amongst these women who are even from rich families, I have seen them they have hypothyroidism and they develop dryness, xerosis, and
it is
cracked
very much
teeth.
commonly associated. So
Dr.
thank you.
Bela, sometimes it is difficult to differentiate between progressive symmetrical erythrokeratoderma versus Maldi-Meleda. So is there any differentiating point between these? Because we tend to see both of these conditions, sometimes.
Erythrokeratoderma will have a lot of skin lesions, which will be having erythema, and if it is variable, so
In Indian skin, it is difficult. In Indian skin, sometimes it is difficult to appreciate the erythema. These lesions tend to be very fixed on the dorsa of the hands and feet, and also involve the palmoplantar,
yeah,
keratoderma.
it does involve.
And they have these lesions on the knees and elbows, just like you see in the Maldi-Meleda. So can you clinically differentiate between these? How do you do that?
Yeah, Maldi-Meleda will again have a pseudoenheme formation, which will not be seen in erythrokeratoderma variabilis or maybe Gottron's symmetrical disease. And you can take biopsy. You can take biopsy. Erythrokeratoderma will be
So
different.
biopsy, that's what I am saying. Will biopsy differentiate between these two conditions?
Yes, yes.
How do you differentiate those?
Erythrokeratoderma.
Is there any
Dermolytic.
See,
Is there any
Maldi-Meleda,
specific finding?
so it's a non-epidermolytic hyperkeratosis. Again, erythrokeratoderma variable is also non-epidermolytic. So hyperkeratosis and orthohyperkeratosis will be seen in both of the conditions. But I think there will be subtle changes in context of granular cell layer and acanthotic epidermis, probably. I'm not really sure about this differentiation.
Maybe erythema also, madam. It will be more in the erythrokeratoderma variabilis.
See, variabilis will change the places, whereas the Gottron's variety will be bilaterally symmetrical, involving much more areas.
Maldi-Meleda is more severe.
Yeah, it is more severe.
Well, thank you very much. It was a nice interactive session. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very excellent.
Thank you, Bela. Very well
I'll
done.
find out those changes by I'll just read again. Dr.
we'll
Lalit.
be meeting
And
next
write
Friday.
to you. Yeah, sure.
So we meet on next Friday.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
I'll find out. I'll read again. Thank you. Bye.
Good night.
Bye, Janet.
Good night.
Yes, sir.